versus 100 million lives.
The biggest problem, and there's a point that needs to be made there, but even before we get there, the biggest problem with Kennedy, like the case itself and looking at it, is fucking everyone hated this guy.
Correct.
Perhaps with the exception of Khrushchev, who might have only disliked him rather than hated him, because at least he was talking to him. He was like, well, that's a fucking change. Everyone else around the world was like, fuck this guy, we don't like him. People in the underworld criminal organizations, governments, you name it, our own government. You talk to the Cuban nationals who were in CIA, you talk to like Danny talked to Felix Rodriguez down, who's still alive, longtime CIA guy who was born in Cuba. They view Kennedy as a traitor, which I think is ridiculous, by the way. But, they're Cubans and they're very, very upset about Castro. I get it. And so they're upset about the Bay of Pigs. But the other thing you're saying, Stu, is you're talking about a potential 60 cover-up here to where they're like, oh my God, if it gets out that Cuba and as a result the Soviets are involved, boom, World War III is happening and 100 million people die. My only issue with that theory is that we know for a fact, I cite this all the time on the show, that during this time period, there were high-level people in the Pentagon and in CIA and in these various bureaucracies who legitimately would openly talk about the conflict with the Soviets in this way, in that they would say things like, well, if they nuked us, we would lose 60, but then we'd hit them back and they'd lose 240 and we'd win by 180. They're talking about millions of lives.
I know that. I say that all the time to people too. I said that to my students when I taught history and modern American history. I used to point it out to them all the time when we did Missile Crisis. We'd watch 13 Days. I'm like, you think this is fiction? It's pretty close to the truth, folks. Curtis LeMay was freaking nuts.
Out of his mind.
Out of his freaking gourd. And JFK knew it. But now you got to divide things up, right? There are people who wanted the war, right? But there are also a lot of people who knew maybe that if you start opening up things on the Kennedy assassination, in fact, Curtis LeMay is on the list for people. Right? That it could go back to them. Right? So it's convenient for them to potentially get in on the cover-up. If they see it's falling apart in a